Welcome to LearnHowToQuilt.com. In this video, the first in our border series, you'll learn about a quick and easy way to figure border yardage for small quilts using very little math. We'll go over these 5 steps to ensure that your border is ready in no time. Later videos will showcase more detailed instructions for calculating borders on both small and large quilts. So let's get started on this first step of figuring the border width. If my quilt doesn't have to end up being a precise size, then I'm often what I call loosey-goosey with my borders. I'll interview different fabrics and different widths with my quilt top before I decide on a favorite. There's no right or wrong answer here. I think a good motto for this method would be, any size will do, it's all up to you. I've decided to go with this fabric and a 4-inch border. In order to get the cutting size, I'll need to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this side and a 1/4 inch on that side. 1/4 and a 1/4 make a half, so my cutting size for this border is going to be 4.5 inches. I'll need 4 4.5 inch strips. This is a quick way to get a generous estimate of the amount of fabric you'll need for your border. I use this when working on small quilts that have borders less than 44 or 45 inches. So from your fabric, you'll be cutting 4 border strips, 1 for each side. You'll probably have some waste, but the amount is usually very small. Later videos in this series will show you how to calculate yardage precisely, but these involve more math and more of your time. To figure out how much yardage I need for my quilt, I'll make a little sketch of my fabric, and let's say here is my first strip that I need to cut. It's 4.5 inches wide, and that fabric is 45 inches. So let me scoot over. I'll need another 4.5 inch strip, another 4.5 inch strip, and one more 4.5 inch strip. So if I add all 4 of those together, or I can multiply 4.5 times 4, I end up with 18 inches. So the amount of yardage that I'll need for this border will be 18 inches, which is about 1/2 of a yard. As I said earlier, this is a quick method for finding yardage. If you want a more precise way of figuring out yardage, you'll want to check out the next video in our series. First, make sure your fabric's been pressed. Then fold it into fourths. Trim to get a clean edge. Measure over 4.5 inches and cut. I'll need 3 more of these strips. So now that I know the width of each strip, I'll use my quilt to figure out the border length of each strip. Finding the border length is the easiest part of the process. There's no math or measuring with rulers. Before you get started, make sure your quilt has been pressed. In order to cut these strips to fit my quilt, I'd like to measure through the center and then trim. I'll need 2 of these to sew to each end. After sewing and then pressing these seams to the outside, I'll take 2 of my border strips and measure through the center, and then trim these edges. When sewing, make sure to ease your borders to the quilt top. And here are my completed borders. For more information about easing borders, check out our video, Squaring Up Your Quilt. You'll find the link below. If you're working on a larger size quilt and/or want a more precise cutting measurement for the length of your borders, check out the other videos in this series. You'll find links to these videos below. Hope you stay tuned. Thanks for visiting LearnHowToQuilt.com. Please share our videos with your friends. Thanks.